Welcome into Sportz Blitz Live. This is Luke Robinson, joined by a special guest here, certainly Mr. Jason Cole with Yahoo Sports. He writes about the NFL all the time. Jason, how you doing today?
I am terrific, thank you.
Well, listen, you're doing better than some of the guys you write about for the NFL. A lot of big-time names associated with this casino down in South Alabama. Talk about this situation some. I mean, this is a really sticky wicket because when you're an NFL player, you can't be involved in any type of gambling investment, correct?
That's correct, and what you have is about 25 players at least, including Terrell Owens and Adalius Thomas, Gerard Warren, Santonio Holmes, a bunch of these guys who invested money in the bingo pavilion down at Dothan. It was it's now called the Center Stage Development. It used to be called the Country Crossing Development, and it was closed down about a year and a half ago by former Governor Riley. And as most people in Alabama know, there's that whole big lawsuit revolving around bingo gambling up in Montgomery going on. So, yeah, these players have invested close to $20 million altogether, and the bingo, they're hoping to reopen this casino, but the NFL is probably going to step in and say these guys have to divest themselves, and if they don't divest themselves, they probably face discipline from the league. It's a fairly sticky situation for players with a lot of money involved.
But how's the league going to enforce discipline, number one, right now when they're in the middle of a lockout? Number two...
Well, they can't. Let me just preface this by saying, while they're in the middle of a lockout, they can't do anything. But as soon as you get the collective bargaining agreement settled and you have back to having, rules, again, you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to be involved in gaming. So at the moment, the players are okay. But as soon as they go back to work, they're going to have to work this problem out. And they're going to have to hope that some of the money is flowing back toward them so they can get their money back and hopefully get even on this thing and won't have to take a loss. But it's definitely a precarious situation because they got money involved on one side, they got discipline involved on another side from the league, where definitely they're not supposed to be involved in this kind of a business.
What about discipline for players that may no longer be in the NFL? They may not be able to find a home like a T.O. or an Adalius Thomas. What if they don't have a team? Then how do you enforce the discipline? How does that work?
Well, at that point, you don't do anything to them. But if those guys want to be involved in a team, then you have an issue. And I think T.O. definitely wants to play this year coming up, so he's going to have to divest himself. The other issue is if guys want to work in the NFL or around the NFL, you certainly can't be a broadcaster. You can't be an executive. You can't be any kind of coach in the NFL and have these. It's not just players. It's anybody who's pretty much involved in the league as an employee cannot have an association with a gaming institution like this. So, yeah, if a guy wants to step away, if Adalius Thomas has indeed retired because he didn't play last year and he's not planning to return to the field, then he's okay. But if he ever wants to work in the NFL again, either be as a player or in some other capacity, he's going to have to get out of this investment.
Jason, how much of this falls on the player? And I know the player's going to get a bad rap here, but it seems to me if I'm a player, if I'm as well-known and as dedicated as Terrell Owens, and he's from our hometown, so I know a lot about Terrell, and I know how dedicated he's been. It seems to me like his focus is always going to be on making himself a better football player, and he's going to let somebody else manage his money. I mean, shouldn't a lot of the blame go to whoever's managing these guys' financial portfolios?
Well, some of it goes there, but look, ultimately you're responsible for what you do with your money. And, you would think that your financial advisor, and in this case that was Jeff Rubin, who's trying to reconstitute the casino, and Jeff believes that, he cleared this and that it wasn't going to be a problem. I think that the league sees this otherwise. But ultimately, look, you're responsible for what you do. You're responsible for your money. You're responsible for your portfolio. And I understand that, becoming a better athlete is an important job, and that takes, your primary focus. But there's certainly enough hours in the day where you can go check with your people and say, what am I invested in? And is that, in accordance with league rules? It's not a very difficult question. And you got to point the thumb at some point. You got to take responsibility for yourself. And, in this case, that's, this is the player's career. They should know the rules, and, they should double-check things to make sure that these are done right.
And, Jason, this may be all a moot point if we don't have a football season next year. What's the progress looking like? I know that it seemed like it was very close to having an agreement between the NFL Players Union and the league owners, and then there was a monkey wrench thrown right into the middle of it when some other owners didn't like the deal. What is going on here? Are we going to have football in this coming season?
Well, I'm actually in Chicago right now, and they're going to have a meeting here on Tuesday and Wednesday among the owners. And there's no disagreement yet, and that's to play out here over the next 2 days to find out if the owners are in agreement that they can handle this deal and live with the good and the bad of whatever that deal is, so that they can eventually get a deal. It's not really a union right now, but eventually they will be asked to reform as a union by the league, so that they can settle the lawsuit, settle the lockout, and get a season going. I would say that you can be cautiously optimistic that a deal will get done, and that we'll have Sunday football at the very least come September. But I say guardedly optimistic because you're involved basically 32 billionaires, really 31 plus the publicly owned Green Bay Packers. But you involve that many people with their money, and there are going to be some disagreements about how the system is going to go. So we're going to have to see if those disagreements are able to, are quiet enough or insignificant enough that it won't hold up a deal, or will they, catch fire and all of a sudden we will have a big problem, and that's going to hold up a deal. That's going to be critical here over the next 2 days on Tuesday and Wednesday in Chicago.
Well, Jason, same question. NBA, you've covered the NBA as well. Are we looking at a stalemate in the NBA season? Because I know the NBA's got some labor strife out there too. Are we going to have an NBA season come next year?
Well, fortunately, it's been a long time since we covered the NBA. However, there's a huge difference between the NBA and the NFL, and that is there are a lot of teams out there in the NBA that are not making money. Okay, you can look at the Carolina Bobcats. You can look at the number of teams that are in financial distress, and the league is going to portray that to the players that we got a number of teams that we have to keep healthy. That's real. In the NFL, owners aren't making as much as they want, but they can't say that they're not making money. If they tried to say that they're not making money, they would have opened their books by now. And that's the biggest indication that you'll ever get that the NFL is making money. They refuse to open their books. The NBA, they opened their books. The players counted by saying that they made the books up, but that's a different argument. The owners did indeed open their books up in the NBA, and that is a sure sign that there is indeed financial distress and these teams aren't making money. So that makes for a much stickier problem. I think the NBA is going to have much more problems than the NFL. The NFL has enough money that they can settle these issues. The NBA, in certain places, does not.
Well, Jason, you worked for the Miami Herald for 15 years, I believe. Is anybody down there ever going to forgive Nick Saban?
Well, I think Nick has probably forgotten by now. I mean, look, they won 115 afterwards. I mean, Nick's they're just going to laugh at Nick forever. And it's unfortunate because I like Nick, but he lied. I mean, there's no way around that. He lied again and again and again, and he said it again and again that he was not going to be the coach of Alabama. Okay, well, he's now the coach of Alabama. Okay, everybody knows it. And again, I don't blame Nick. He wasn't really suited for the NFL. He made a bad decision on who he wanted. Unfortunate decision. I understood the logic of it, but an unfortunate decision on the quarterback situation. Picking between Drew Brees and Dante Culpepper. If he had picked Drew Brees, he'd probably still be in the NFL. He didn't, and he hightailed it to Alabama. He didn't like South Florida. Okay, but if you lie like that and you lie in a bald-faced manner, people are going to remember that, and they're always going to make fun of you for it. But I think the people who are Dolphins fans have probably moved on to how do we fix our team right today.
And on that same note, I'm an old Dolphins fan myself. Are the Dolphins going to be any better next year? Do you feel like they've upgraded from this last draft?
No, I don't think they're really truly upgraded. I mean, Pouncey's going to be a decent player, and that wasn't a bad pick. It's not really addressing their main need, is they need weapons on offense. And most importantly, they need to find out if they have a quarterback. And I think we got a pretty good estimation on where Chad Henney's at right now, and it's not really a good answer. So I see a team that's very stagnant at this point. And I see a coach who's pretty stagnant as well. I mean, they don't have a lot of team speed. They don't have a quarterback, and the defense is okay, but certainly not overwhelming. I think that a lot of the deficiencies of the defense were covered by the fact that opponents didn't feel like they had to really go after them and score a lot. So I hate to say that for Dolphins fans, but I think you're looking at pretty much the same team you had last year, which is somewhere in that 7-9 and 9-7 range. They could maybe trick it up and get into a playoff position depending on how the division rolls out. But more likely than with the Jets and the Patriots in that division, I would think that it's more likely not going to be a playoff contender just yet.
I agree with you there, unfortunately. But final question here: who has the better NFL career in your opinion, Cam Newton or Blaine Gabbert?
Well, I wish you could put Blaine Gabbert's head on Cam Newton's body. And that's, because Blaine Gabbert's a really, really smart guy, but he's just not very accurate. And look, you talk to guys like Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, and enough times I've talked to them both. It's pretty simple. You better be accurate as a quarterback. Number one, you better make good decisions. Number two, you better be accurate. I think Cam Newton's got a better chance because he's just a guy who can make more things happen. He's got just, much greater athletic ability. But my problem with Cam Newton is that he's surrounded by a bunch of garbage right now. That team is just not very good. And they're going to have to, I think they're going to have to be very patient with him because the system he came from at Auburn, I know a lot of people made a lot out of the whole John Gruden situation, where he talked about describing plays, and he talked about the simplified way that they called plays at Auburn. That was out of necessity. You only had a guy there for a short period of time. You had to make sure that he could run the system, as efficiently and quickly as possible. So it's going to be a tough transition for Cam Newton. Number one, because he's going to have to learn a lot. Number two, because he's not surrounded by very good players. I just hope that Carolina is very patient with him, because I think he has a chance to be a star. But if he plays too early and there's too much pressure on him, he could also be a complete bust. It's an absolute boom or bust kind of situation.
Well, Jason, NFL fans are known for their patience, so I'm sure Cam Newton will get all that he needs.
Well, in Carolina's situation, they could probably afford to take a little bit more time. They could probably justify it. Because, look, the one thing you can always say is the kid didn't have an off-season to get ready. He hasn't been working with his coaches. So you have a built-in excuse of saying, look, we're not going to throw this kid to the wolves. We're not going to throw him out there against defenses who are way, way ahead of him. And we will just let him sit and learn. And we'll let him sit, for the first 8-10 games, maybe spots him in some action. But that's going to put a lot of pressure on year two. And he's going to have to catch up in year two. And he's going to have to do a lot of catching up as the season progresses here, so he's ready for a few bit parts. But I think that if Carolina is wise and they take that built-in excuse and they learn to live with the fact that they're not going to be very good for another year and say, look, we're not going to do this to this kid, then I think they have a better chance. If they throw him out there and they try and play him right away and just generate season ticket sales and try and get people interested in this kid, they're taking a huge risk that he's going to fail again, and he's just not going to be ready.
Well, Jason, thanks so much for joining us, bud. I really do appreciate your insight, and I know you're a hot commodity right now with all these stories going on, so go to it and go to your next interview, and thanks for being with us.
No problem. Thank you. Take care.
That was Jason Cole from Yahoo Sports. We certainly do appreciate his being on Sportz Blitz Live, and we'll be back in just a minute.